I'm Aaron Davidson. We have a great little episode for you today. We've got a virtual seminar titled One Shot, Preparing for Your Sheep Hunt. That's a pretty sexy title. Thank goodness sheep hunting's awesome, because I kind of let you down on titling up that seminar. But we have some really cool cats with us today. Good friends and associates. I've worked with these guys a long time, and they are hardcore mountain hunting, sheep hunting dudes. In the industry, I don't know who I would look to for better advice and better information. So I've got Brennan Burns from KUIU. We kind of went over some titles earlier. He actually has the coolest title in this space. It's Chief Hunting Officer, and then in subtext and Conservation Director, but I'm pretty sure it's CHO is in caps in that title situation. Brendan and I have known each other for a long time, and we've worked together on a lot of customer topics. We've worked together on some conservation projects, and I've been a real big fan of the KUIU story and the Jason Harrison story, the founder story that was there. And so our company has always been a big supporter of KUIU. It's been a great relationship. We've got Greg Mchale, blue shirt down there in the corner. Greg's a good friend. He has allowed us to participate with him in an awesome program that he produces called Greg Mchale's Wild Yukon. And we've worked with him for several years on that, and we get really true, authentic mountain and in a lot of cases Western style hunting content. Pretty extreme, hardcore on the physical preparation side. We do get a lot of tips and tricks from Greg on training and getting ready on that side. So looking forward to his input today. And then another good friend of mine, Mark Peterson. Again, we've had a great relationship with Mark. Mark's the owner of WTA, so Worldwide Trophy Adventures. And our connection comes from way back when we used to do tag applications with Cabela's tags. And that's one entity that Mark has put into his portfolio and as part of his booking agency and some other companies that he runs there. But Mark does do some television programming that we work with him on, a couple different shows. Mark, what are your show titles that you're running currently?
Expedition Series, which is more of the grand sheep hunting, and then also Triple Threat, which is going after the North America 29.
And Triple Threat, it's with rifle, bow, and muzzleloader, right?
Correct.
So we don't really care about the bow hunting shows personally, but the muzzleloader and rifle ones we get excited about.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, we've got plenty of time today, but I want to jump right into some content and start discussing some projects. Now, obviously, you guys know me. I'm a one-trick pony. It's like all I want to do is talk about guns and shooting a long ways away. When it comes to sheep hunting, I don't think there's any other type of event that has more pressure when it comes time to make that shot. So I feel like great shooting and sheep hunting, even though it might not be the longest shooting that you want to do, it's like great shooting and sheep hunting go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to circle around, topics in your areas of expertise, whether it's the equipment or the preparation, or the transportation or whatever it is. Let's talk about shooting gear, equipment, that kind of stuff. And I'll moderate that way. But if you guys have some inputs, that take us off tangent, that's great. So let's give our guys some great content. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to start at, which is, let's set the stage for a sheep hunt. And I've asked Brendan to maybe share some of his thoughts about, how far is the typical sheep shot. Like, you've been on a lot of hunts, you've got a lot of clients that you work with, you hear all the sheep stories. How far is the typical sheep shot?
Well, it depends on Doll, Stone, Desert, Bighorn. It obviously a lot depends on the terrain too. But I think going back to what your point earlier is, like, there's a lot of pressure involved. It's the most pressure of anything you're going to do because those opportunities are so limited. I mean, you either drew a tag that's it's either big money involved or a lot of pressure because you're not going to get to do it again. Yep. And it's rare that you find yourself accidentally on a sheep hunt, like, oh yeah, just know. So it's one of those things where it is a lot of pressure. It's more pressure than just about anything, and the repercussions. Again, the amount of energy it takes to get where you're going, the amount of money or the time you've applied all that stuff. Like, it is a pile of pressure. And it's one of those things where I don't like to shoot over 300 yards. If you can help it. I mean, that's, I have a thing with clients.
We would all hope that a 300-yard shot is.
Yeah. With clients, I tell them 300 and in is on you and 300 and up is on me. If I make you shoot further than that, that's because it's a very safe distance, and a lot of people aren't correctly trained with how to shoot that far. So for me, it really boils down to more of like, I'm looking for old rams and I'm looking to count rings. And, there's also that factor too, where your distance on how far you're comfortable to shoot at is based on your training. Like, you're not going to rise to the level of the hunt, the pressure. You're going to fall to the, to your training, whatever you've practiced at and are good at, you're going to fall that. You're not going to rise to the occasion when it's a lot of pressure online. You're going to default to where you've practiced to. So it depends on what your max range is. And
you just picked up on something I want to discuss a little more, which is actually limited on how far you can shoot based on, is it old enough or not? I mean, how many places do we hunt sheep where there's either an age restriction or there's a full curl type restriction, and you throw a little heat mirage in and you get 400 or 500 yards away, you're not going to be able to be sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you're counting rings, especially like on thin horns, especially like when you're talking stone sheep, those things get buried, or deserts are really, really, really tough. I mean, my personal rifle preference is something that'll do 600 yards if I have to do it. But, the other factor on these hunts is, it's not, there's a wounding, if you wound one, you own that animal. Like, it's a tough thing. Like, if you're on a Dall sheep hunt or a stone sheep hunt, and they're $40,000 to $50,000 or $30,000 on a Dall sheep, and you hit one bad, or, some conditions that are out of control, it's not like where Greg is a resident. Well, he'll be able to come back and look for it. Like, it's a finite time you're there, and you get one chance at one. If you hit one, that's probably your animal. So I hedge on the side of, I want to get closer. But, if you hit, on the other hand, if you hit one and it's getting away and you need to put another one, and you need to be able to shoot at those longer distances. So it's kind of like a self-control thing. Like, I don't like to shoot, my personal range is 400. And I don't shoot as much as you do. But that's my personal range.
Mark, what's your farthest shot on a sheep?
780 on a Marco Polo in Tajikistan. It's different.
Yeah, now those guys always say you got to be ready to shoot 750. I think they throw lead open.
It's just wide open. There's nothing to hide by. My farthest on Bighorn in Alberta was 720, and that was just, it was tough. It was tough hunting, and there was no way to get closer, type of thing. But on Brendan's comments, like, when I'm out with you, Aaron, I'm always amazed at how good I can hit steel at 1,000 and 1,200. And then I come back to Michigan and I'm shooting at 800, which is as far as my range goes here. And I like to use 800 because I really like those shots. If I'm good at 800, I really like a shot at 300 then, because it's just, man, I feel really solid because I can hit it at 800, but 300 is so much easier.
What would you think your average, if you had to just guess, your average mountain, sheep hunting scenario shot would be?
350 to 400. Just seems, if you're hunting with a rifle, and I mean, it's a different mindset too if you're hunting with a rifle than if you're hunting with a bow, like Brendan does all the time, and just where you're going is a big
he's starting at 30 and working out.
Exactly. But like, I wouldn't recommend a whole bunch of areas in Alberta to ever go with a bow, because you're never going to be able to get within 700 yards of a sheep. So don't go there and wipe that out. But what the rifle does, it allows you to widen the deck of where you go, knowing, especially if you look in the U.S. spots where you can draw, if you're going to go there with a rifle, there's zones that you wouldn't want to go with a bow. Just wide. So
when you guys are consulting and booking hunts and doing references, you guys are giving the shooter, the hunter, sorry, not shooters, the hunters, the advice. It's like, here's what you need to be prepared to do on this hunt.
Yep. And I'll be honest, on the tag applications, we only have a handful of guys that actually apply for archery in the States for sheep, just because if they're going to wait that period anyway, what's another 5 or 6 years that I can draw with a bow and just the majority of that comfort level. So most of them do end up applying with a rifle. But yeah, we apply different zones for somebody, and truthfully apply different zones based on fitness levels and skill sets too, of, hey, just how comfortable are you and where can you get to?
Greg, on your show this year, didn't you do a film episode with your dad?
Yeah, I get to hunt with my dad, and
Did you hunt moose or sheep? I forget.
this year we hunted both. This past season, which doesn't air until next year, but I've hunted sheep now for television 3 times with my dad, and yeah, it's always always entertaining.
How far would you let him take a shot at a sheep?
You know what? My dad is of that kind of still old school that, or maybe he believes that he can just shoot anything at any distance. I just have to let him. But yeah, no, I feel comfortable with him anywhere in that 350 to 400 range. He's pretty solid at that. You start to stretch it out. He probably could with the instruction. Me being there to really to help them out. Like so many people, when we're in the mountains, if you've got somebody else to bounce things off of, and there's another skilled person that's there with you, it's just that much more information that you can bounce off each other. And so if I helped him out, he's a good shot. To my own chagrin, sometimes he's better than I think he should be.
I always figure when my brother's there, my range is extended about 25% because he's going to help me make a good wind call and not do something stupid.
Yeah.
I remember the first sheep I killed. I drew a New Mexico Bighorn through the tag service, through the WTA tag service. First year I'd ever put in, and got to go hunt Wheeler Peak. Made a great friend with GT Nunn down there, Frontier Outfitting, and we went and sat on the side of a mountain for a whole day. Got rained on, snowed on, froze our tails off. It was brutal. And then finally the sun comes out and a sheep pops out. And that shot was over 650 yards. And, I remember we missed the wind by about, a half minute. And I remember Mike called the correction, and I was just going to shoot one more time. I mean, that was totally dead right in front of the shoulder. I mean, he was just going to bleed out and die. It was like, you always want to anchor one more. So I sent another one, and he literally told me to make that correction, and I just didn't do it. I was in tunnel vision. I was keyed in. And I think some of that goes towards not just the equipment preparation, but let's talk a little bit about mental preparation. I kind of asked the question, it's like, what's the worst, scenario you guys have experienced? Now, I know I've made plenty of bad shots in my life. I get tunneled up. I get really, into the zone. I need somebody to twist on my ear and tell me to make a change. And I've seen that with guys I've hunted with before. It's like guys get excited and you kind of get in that moment of truth. But it can go south on you pretty quick. So I think, you've got this preparation that needs to come. Mark alluded to, getting in a system and practicing at 800 makes him, 300 or 400 yards deadly. What do you guys think? Let's start with Greg. What do you guys think about this preparation concept? How have you used that in your shooting abilities to improve your opportunities for success?
Yeah, like for me, when we're talking about shooting, I was always in the same ballpark of, shoot that 300 yards, 300 to 400 was always my, sweet spot. And I knew that and confidence that there was anything in that zone, and it was going to hit the ground. It really wasn't until I came to your course that my eyes were opened up to what with some instruction, what the ability of what I would consider myself as, maybe an average shooter at the time, maybe more than average because I've had some military shooting or some police shooting experience. But really, it wasn't until that course that it gave me the insight and the belief that I had the ability to take those long shots, and also the knowledge that this is a perishable, it's a perishable item, and you must continue to train yourself. Now, and the training, whether it's physical training to be up in the mountains or whether it's shooting training, these are all key factors in success on the mountain at any range. So, for me, it was getting out there and shooting that 500, 600 yards and just knowing that this is going to be a no-brainer when it's go time.
Yeah. I think finding your limits, finding kind of where you max out is always a good way to understand what you're capable of, whether it's physical, mental, shooting, whatever. I think finding your limits is good. Brendan, a topic that I wanted to touch on was the weight consideration. I feel like in sheep hunting world, like weight is the driving motivator for all gear selection. I know why it's that way, but talk to me a little bit about your experience, pros and cons with weight. I mean, I know you've done some massive expeditions. You've probably been hunting with some guys that weren't as physically fit as they could have been. Talk to me about weight considerations both ways.
Well, weight consideration is a lot of it's on your gear preference, like what's worth it and what's not. Obviously, anything you can cut weight out will allow you to either take, number one, more food, which is always a huge thing. And again, I'm talking like a true unsupported backpack type hunt. That's what my reference point would be, like, meaning you're not getting helped out. You are starting at A and coming out B or whatever, or you're getting dropped off. Like, there's no assistance, which it's nice when you can get that, but that's what I base everything on. So anything that functions as well as you need it to. And then, it boils down to a little bit of creature comforts too. But I mean, in reality, it's cutting out everything you possibly can to still be comfortable or to functional, all the stuff you need. And then it allows you to carry either more food or, like myself on big sheep hunts, like I cut my weight down on everything. I mean, I'm not, not cutting your toothbrush in half, stuff like that. I mean, like making real, if things are dual purpose that do two things really well, not do two things marginally, but and then being able to, like, for myself, I love to pack a really big spotting scope. So I go into it, everything I put in my pack, and I was like, I'm going to offset this with a heavy spotting scope, because I feel like a big spotting scope, the same with the rifle. I feel like a big spotting scope means that I don't have to walk as far. I can identify what I'm looking at a lot further. It's well worth it for me to carry a 95 on a backpack on, but I'm going to cut that weight out of other things. And so I just look at what's
your 7-10 day backpack, kit weigh?
I like to be around 45 pounds. I mean, if I can be in that, and that's with basically 20 pounds of food.
So you're running an ultra pack, not a pro pack.
I run the pro a lot without a lid. It just depends on the hunt too. Sometimes a lot of it depends on if it's 10 days of food or 5 days. Sometimes you get a flight drop. That makes a huge difference. A lot of it depends. Is it a desert sheep hunt? Is it a bighorn hunt? Is it a Dall sheep hunt? What's the guide pack? And are you splitting a tent? Are you using your own tent? Like, there's a lot of different factors, but yeah, I mean, I don't like to carry a ton of weight if I can. The less I can carry, the further I can go, the better I feel. A lot of it depends on temperature.
Here's a question for you. When it comes shot distance, okay, 300-400 yards, maybe a cleanup shot if you need to. How heavy does your gun need to be? The guns that you're using right now, which one are you grabbing and taking on a sheep hunt, and what's it going to weigh?
My goal used to always be like a 6-pound, 600-yard gun. That's what I feel like. I don't have a tall turret. I have a short turret on everything. I mean, when you guys built the gun for me, you're like, well, this gun will do way more than you got that scope for it. I'm like, that's the scope I want. It's a 14. Like, I built it a little different than you guys like to at some point in time, but I like to have a lighter, because it's a paperweight until I need it. And again, when you're counting rings and you're like, I mean, on great big sheep, you don't really have to look at them that much. But a lot of times they're big and hoopy or looking for big bases. Like, you got to get fairly close. I mean, 400 yards is, you don't know what that animal truly is until you get close enough to it. So that's always been my goal, is a 6-pound, 600-yard gun. The 7 LRM that you guys built for me shoots better than that. It's about 7.5 pounds, and it's a 900-yard gun, and it'll do it for sure. So it depends on the hunt too.
Mark, what about you? What's the weight of gun that you're taking on your next sheep hunt?
I want to say it's 7.2. It's a 7 LRM. That's just my go-to on any sheep hunt with a rifle.
Yeah. Just cracking 7 pounds.
Yeah. My personal preference is to have that little bit more oomph in a shot, just in case it is a bad shot. You get a little bit more than a smaller caliber, and I love that 7 LRM. I mean, that thing is it's awesome.
Cool. You know, when it comes to equipment and weight and travel, it's like I can't help but think that, you know, some of the international trips I've done, it's like managing your gear and the weight of your gear is a massive undertaking. And one of the things that always bugged me was how big and heavy rifle cases are, but like that's probably not changing much anytime soon.
That's one. Anytime you travel with a rifle, that's one of your bags right there is your rifle case.
Yeah.
And try to fit it. I try to fit as much in my rifle case as I can. I mean, obviously I can't throw my shells in there, but to try to distribute your weight out amongst all the bags. An example, going to Tajikistan, it's cold, so you got to have a lot of layers, and all of a sudden your normal bag is filled with just puffy clothes and layers and so forth, and your second bag's your rifle. You're gonna bring a third bag and so forth. So it's definitely a pain when you start traveling international.
When you travel international, how many bags do you end up, you know, you're going to go do an Asia sheep hunt. How many bags do you end up taking?
I try to go with one bag and a rifle case, just because when you get there, the travel, what I've seen, the travel once you get into Asia is always difficult, and just the less stuff that you have, the better. Now, of course, I always have a camera guy with me that seems like he's got 14 bags and 7
He's
hard
got
cases.
his own problems.
Yeah, and so we learned to start packing in soft cases and not hard cases for our cameras too, just because it doesn't fit in every Asian vehicle that you would like it to.
Well, when you traveled, your second bag, you've got one hard case for your rifle and you soft case inside. You've got a second case. Is that a hard case, or are you traveling with a soft bag?
As far as for my rifle,
Your secondary.
It's a big soft. It's a big soft. And what I pack individual bags inside of the big bag, just in case I'm somewhere and I got to get my bag down smaller in size. I can pull one bag out and just shove it somewhere.
You do the same thing, don't you, Brennan? You travel with one of your big Kuiu bags.
Yeah, as a soft case, and then the hard case is actually the one I take is actually a really long bow case that I've had for a long time, and my rifle will fit in there, and it's got a lot of extra room. I put my spotter in there and binos and super down stuff and pack everything around it. It's a bit of a pain to unpack for the airline, but I try and get it. Like I said, I generally on a big expedition type thing, when it's all said and done and you're headed somewhere, you know, like between 80 and 90 pounds worth of gear. That's with your bags and the hard case and boots, and you're generally wearing your regular shoes. I mean, like, you know, they tell you to do all the wear your boots and all that stuff, but ultimately, especially a lot with, you know, ultimately, if your gear doesn't show up, you're really not going hunting. So,
dude, we did the first sheep hunt we ever did. Gear didn't show up. I borrowed a set of boots that are about 3 sizes too big. I wore 3 pair of socks to try to make it work, and blistered the hell out of my feet. But we hunted in blue jeans and borrowed boots. It was a trip. Greg, you guys do tons of flying, don't you? Lots of Super Cub work. Talk to me about gear considerations if you're going to have a fly, you know, kind of a Super Cub, you know, drop or a helicopter drop at the end of your trip.
So like when it's funny because we start talking about guns and traveling with guns, and I obviously don't do a whole lot of that up here in the Yukon. So, but a cool product that I do use and love is Air Armor Tech, and I think Mark, that'll work good for you. Is all you're traveling, and because obviously we know you have to have this hard case that it sits that you have to have to lock. That's the only thing about the traveling. So Air Armor Tech, they built this bag. It's inflatable. And I can talk about that as far as throwing it out of an airplane, because I don't know if you saw that video, but it's an inflatable soft case that could go inside your hard case, and then once you don't need your hard case, leave it at the airport or leave it wherever.
Nice.
You travel with this thing. But I threw that case out of my Super Cub with your gun in it, Aaron, and I dropped that, and I was flying, and I landed, picked it up, shot it just to see if you know, how much protection this case had.
How fast do you think you're going? 60 mile an hour?
40, and it slowed down to about 40, 45. So, I mean, completely manageable for a Cub. But yeah, so I dropped this thing out of the airplane and land, walk over, pick it up, shoot it 200 yards, and I was off the center by a couple inches. So you've got
the Air Armor Tech gives you some protection without the weight. What about some of the other gear considerations or bag considerations? Mark talked about storing his gear in smaller bags. I know KUIU offers a ton of, bag systems, that you can just have these smaller and smaller and soft, side stuff. I know that Super Cubs have space and size constrictions.
With the Super Cup, you want something as soft, because as soon as you get that, that hard case in there, it bounces around and takes up a lot more room than you actually need, because there's no room in a Super Cub to start with. Then throw a dude in the back, and now you're really limited, as everybody here knows. They've all had Super Cub time. So for me, it's really important that soft bags that are moldable and you can shove in that back compartment as far as you can, and obviously weight limits and things that you need to consider when aviation's involved. But yeah, definitely those KUIU bags, the soft bags, are what I throw them out of the airplane all the time, because I know that I can pitch them out of the airplane, hike to it in a week, and as long as I roughly know where it is. Now they make the orange ones, which is a no-brainer, so I can throw that out of the airplane, hike to it, and get there, pick it up, and you're good to go. So soft bags.
Mark, with your gear and your traveling, what other considerations have you seen traveling internationally with your gun? I know when I go on a hunt, I really, really want to use my gun, because it takes me a lot of shots, and maybe even in the case of some of the weapons I've used, maybe even years to really, really start to trust a rifle. It's like you want to take that with you on that high pressure clutch, potentially once in a lifetime event. Talk to me a little bit about traveling with your weapon and some of the things that you need to be aware of as a new international hunter.
Yeah, and you did hit on a big one there, especially if you're going sheep hunting or mountain hunting in another country. I mean, you want your own rifle. I've got to the point to where the gun showed up a day late, and I was using the first day a borrowed rifle, and the thing's hitting 4 feet to the right because it was in Pakistan, and that's just not a scenario you want to get in. But what I've only had that one issue of traveling, and that was the gun was delayed coming through Turkey, and it just showed up a day late. That was the only one I had. But the one thing that I got to beat down is always prep far in advance if you're traveling international with your rifle. It's not something to start doing 4 weeks, 6 weeks in advance. I mean, it's a couple month process to a lot of the countries to get your gun permits and actually have everything ready to go.
Yeah. So essentially, the main things you need to be aware of is our customs team needs to know what you left the country with.
4457 form.
Yeah. 4457. So that's a really nice thing to get done, and it's kind of inconvenient. So that's one you need to get done. Basically, declaring these products, getting an inspection. They'll sign off on it, and then when you come back into the country with those products, they don't question you that it's a problem. All right, so that's one thing you got to do, and then you've essentially got an import form in your destination country.
Yeah, each country's a little bit different. They give you a rifle permit or a gun permit, and some just have a simple paper that they come with. Some have more of an official form. We always use Travel with Guns. I mean, they're going to book your airfare and do all that stuff, and they work direct on all the countries just to make sure that you're dialed in on all that stuff.
I actually like that. We use a service when we go to South Africa that's we've used for a long time. That does make it a lot easier.
And it's somebody to call in case something happens too. And they're just from the time you leave in the airplane till the time you get there. If anything happens, if your bag's lost, they can dial it in and tell you where it's at.
Perfect. One thing to probably be aware of is that some airports are not gun friendly.
That's what I was just going to say.
I don't know if there's a blacklist that we need to be aware of as hunters, but I know you don't really go through Dulles with a rifle if you can help it. Not that they're anti, just that it's not good. And a lot of the European countries are no bueno. And then I do know that some of the Arab countries don't like guns to show up. So
the Arab countries you can work through, and Amsterdam's a big one. You always hear horror stories of Amsterdam. So Amsterdam, Dubai, all those ones, you can get there just with a little bit of advance. You'll never see your gun when you're in that country, but it just has to have the correct paperwork for it to transfer through that country. If you don't have that, good luck. Your gun's not showing up in the next destination.
Brendan, Greg, have you guys used any other expediters or paperwork guys on any of your travels?
No, I've had, and I haven't hunted as much internationally as Mark has, but I've had a ton of problems in Canada. I mean, they do not like I will not fly Air Canada anymore. I've got
It must be you, Brennan. It's got to be you.
I won't. Well, even last year I came up to hunt Greg, and when we had the muzzle loader, like it's just a nightmare every time something happens. So I've gotten out of where because I live in Montana, I drive to Calgary and then fly one of the smaller airlines just because if I have to go Seattle through Vancouver and all that side, like I drive to the closest place in Canada now and then go through, because I've had just nightmare stuff in Canada.
Mm-hmm. We tried we didn't try. We actually got across the border once with a cargo trailer full of guns and ammunition to go do a training event once. And I swear, ever since that time, those guys give me the 5th degree every time I come into Canada. Like they're just wondering what gun running thing I'm doing up there.
Yeah, those Canadians, they're tough. They're hardcore on this stuff.
Well, while we're on the kind of wrapping up this topic of gear, Greg, what piece of gear do you feel has either contributed to a great success, or maybe the contrast of that has really let you down on a hunt?
I'll go with the wet let you down first, and that was having a you go into a 12-day, most of my hunts are long backpack hunts, and day one, night one of this particular hunt, and your sleeping pad deflates and it's gone, right? So, and we're all camping, we're all sleeping on the rocks, it's just the way it is. And that's one of the ones that sticks out in my mind, because if you're not getting, we're all pushing it hard in the mountains, and then when you go to sleep, you need to get that good rest so that you can do it day after day after day. But yeah, day one, sleeping pad went down, and it's not the most fun when you're sleeping on top of all of your clothes, and you're emptying out your backpack to put it underneath you, and stuff. So that's the one thing that definitely stands out in my mind on a long hunt. But what
pad are you using now that hasn't let you down?
Well, the pad I'm using a couple. Thermarest has never let me down, and so that's one good pad. Now hunting is different than I've been mountaineering, and when you're sleeping on snow, it's completely different than sleeping in in rocks.
Sure.
And so that one definitely, Thermarest has not let me down. Let's put it that way.
Cool. Did you have something there, Mark?
No, I was just laughing because I've had the same exact thing. My first trip to NWT, the freaking pad went down in day one, and it was awful.
You're sleeping in a tent. You're sleeping in. Go ahead, Brennan.
I'd rather lose my sleeping bag than my sleeping pad, because I can wear my down stuff. But if you're sleeping on the hard ground, that is a nightmare.
I remember sleeping in a tent with a flat pad, thinking about maybe smoking the guy next to me so that I could steal his pad from him. Like, it's literally that big of a deal, I think.
Yeah.
That's funny. Like, all of us have had the experience, or it's one of our worst nightmares on a long shoot.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to tell me about a contrast, something where a piece of gear gave you an edge or contributed to success.
Well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to not last season, the season before. I got caught coming off the mountain with a goat on my back. We just took a goat. We're coming down off the mountain, and obviously you've got a lot of weight on your back coming down a rock field, and I got caught in a rock slide. Okay, so not just a few fist-sized boulders. We're talking house and car-sized rocks, and I'm sliding down the mountain on my back, and I always carry my gun right in the middle of my backpack. I never carry it on the side, because for me it's all about weight distribution and having the best ability to move around and be balanced if I have to move, especially in this kind of situation. If rocks move, you need to be able to be on your game and be able to jump out of the way. So for me, I have my gun on my back in the middle of my pack, and I carry the Air Armor Tech builds this scope cover, and that scope cover it was I think probably vital. Well, it was vital in keeping my gun together. But who knows, whether it's, helped save my life in this situation. But last, I come down this rock slide and literally it protects, the scope and, all the gun other than the barrel and the stock. I came out of it with scratches on my barrel and my stock, and the gun was perfect. So it was that day that I really realized how important that was. Because if that had been on day one and I didn't have this scope cover, then that could have been the end of my sheep hunt, or in this case, goat hunt.
Yeah.
So
you can't have a rifle go down, man.
Yeah, that's the most critical piece that I carry as far as protection goes on my backpack every hunt I do.
Mark, on your hunts, when you prepare for hunt, what are you doing to prepare your rifle or protect your rifle so that you get that point of impact where it's supposed to be when it's time to shoot?
Every time, usually before season, what I'll do is you guys struck in me. I don't over clean my gun at all. I hardly clean it. It's like a once or twice a year thing. So I'll clean it. I'll get it ready for the season. I'll run another 20, 30 shots through it. And that's basically it. That's my rifle's ready after that. And I'll run it all the way through the season as long as I'm seeing it's hitting correctly. And it's just as soon as I get to a destination, I shoot it once, I shoot it twice, it's on. I don't touch it again.
Yeah.
Again, if you do have an accident or it slips or it falls, I always check it. I'm kind of the opposite of Greg. I do a weight balance, is where I put my rifle on the right side just in case you got to get to it, and then I use my spotting scope and everything and try to do the balancing trick that way, and the tripod down the center, just because I don't know why I always like to have my gun here just in case.
What are you running a scope code on your scope, or do
Yep.
you run caps scope code?
I run your scope cover on it.
Yeah, so we've got a 5mm thick neoprene scope coat. I like running that. Brendan and I have had some discussions about, backpack. How do you carry a rifle on a backpack? What's the balance between, minimalist approach and where does it need to sit? And I showed him that the way I like to carry my backpack is tucking the scope kind of into the pack and strapping it on, so it's kind of the bottom of the gun's more exposed. Scope and all the good stuff's kind of covered up, and if you've got that neoprene on there, it protects it pretty well. Yep. Do you run tape on the barrel? I think everybody pretty much tapes off the barrel, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. Brendan, how about you? What would you say that most important piece of gear on a sheep hunt is for you?
I've been, I think 6 times in the last 10 years, I've been stuck out overnight, which always sucks. And for me, it's your insulation piece, like enough to where, with a really good hat, good down mittens, down upper piece, down pants, like down full zip down pants are probably my absolute thing. Like I would walk 5 miles back to go get them.
Really?
Oh yeah. Cause when you get stuck out, it's one of those things where it takes a night that is just absolutely going to be totally miserable, the worst night of your life, and just makes it where that sucked, but it wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like having a sleeping bag on you. I mean, it's tolerable. You can get some sleep, but I've spent one night without it, and oh man, it's the worst. So that thing, and conversely on that, when you talk about failure stuff, not failures that I've had, but I've seen with guys I've hunted with is not knowing the food that they're eating on these trips. Like, it'd be like going to another place, and I've seen guys particularly that just have never had, whether it's Mountain House or whatever, freeze dried and been down, like they're just not used to eating 3,500 calories in a day, and they're just like body locks up on them, their performance goes, their eyes get sunken in, they get, as I always tell guys, like you should definitely spend some time, eat a few meals, like make sure your body runs on what you're going to eat on these hunts, because you're already stressed out. We already established it's either more money or more pressure than you're prepared to handle. And you combine that with gastrointestinal problems, and you go like, man, it's just one of those things where anything you're going to eat on a hunt, you should try out. Cause I've seen that wreck people's hunts. Like been back to base camp and like, the guy he's done, like done.
Those freaking Canadians make goofy candy bars too, man.
Oh.
They're so weird.
Except for Coffee Crisp. That's a legit candy bar.
You guys love our candy bars.
No.
No, we don't. The big church, no freaking way do we love that candy bar. All right. Well, I kind of want to talk a little bit about like guys that are interested in sheep hunting. Where do they need to be looking? What are the sheep they need to be doing? What do they need to be budgeting? So I think we've got quite a few different perspectives here. It's like I'm coming in probably on the budget end of the spectrum. I put together a sheep slam, probably one of the cheapest, most budget-oriented sheep slams in the history of man. Although I probably did buy the most expensive doll sheep that was ever bought too. But I do think that a little insight would be valuable. I feel like the stone sheep scenario needs talked about. And I think guys really need to understand how important it is to be putting in for bighorn sheep in every state that they can acquire points and have a chance at. So maybe start off with Brendan. Why don't you tell me where is the next sheep hunt that you're doing, and what's the first sheep hunt? A less than one guy needs to look at and chase after.
Well, you're definitely right. I mean, so the first sheep hunt should probably be a doll sheep hunt. Like it's the most affordable. There's the most opportunity for doll. It's the success rate is pretty good. Now you're talking NWT, Yukon, or Alaska, and I tell guys, call a bunch of people, like talk to hunters from the past, like get somebody you're comfortable with too. Just because I actually just talked to a guy 2 days ago he called me about ultimate tule. I killed a great big ram in ultimate tule with my buddy Jason 2 years ago, and it is a beast of a hunt. It's a big glacier hunt. And after I talked to him, he wanted to kill a big sheep, but he did not want to be anywhere near the ice. And it's like, okay, well maybe the NWT or the Yukon is more what he's looking for. Like a part of it is, I always say that if you go on a sheep hunt, and you don't get out and you're successful, but you don't like that hunt, like a lot of times what an outfitter offers and what your expectations are so far off that the guy can deliver what he does best, but if you don't ask the right questions, you may end up with something that you don't like. I mean, if you don't want
there's
to walk
a
a long
big
way,
difference between a backpack hunt and a horseback hunt, isn't
a
there?
horseback hunt, or there's some guys, like for me, I'm thrilled if I go a week and we see one ram and it's a giant. I'm thrilled with that hunt. There's guys that they want to see a pile of sheep and they want to have options to kill. Like if you go to a low density area that, hey man, we might not get one, but you could kill 170-inch sheep. Like that's an awesome hunt for me. But if you're trying to get your first one, that's the worst choice you could make. So I think a doll sheep is the first one. The hardest one is the bighorn anymore. Like you got to be applying for everything. I mean, there's such limited opportunity for them. The most expensive is, stone sheep is coming around now. I mean, like there's stone sheep are almost more expensive than desert sheep. And I think the average price of a desert sheep is around the same as what a stone sheep was a couple of years ago. And, it's just one of those things where it's just a little bit changing, but the stone sheep is the one that's, there's only 12,000 stone sheep on the planet. Like it's very limited opportunity and it's really expensive.
But wouldn't you agree that it's easier to kill a stone sheep than a bighorn?
For the opportunity now to get a permit for a bighorn right now, whether it's to draw in the U.S., because there's only one place you can hunt where you can just, the unlimited areas in Montana, which the success rate is 3% or something. If you're good, and Alberta's success rate's pretty low. British Columbia, you're either going to pay a lot or the success rate's pretty low. But bighorns are the hardest one to get, I would say, right now. They're transplanting desert sheep everywhere. There's a lot of opportunities in Mexico. It's far better than it used to be.
And Texas is coming on pretty strong, man. They're killing a lot of outad.
And as far as the stone sheep goes, it's kind of the same areas with the same opportunities. It's pretty fixed. And
it's just British Columbia, right?
Yep. British Columbia and the Pellies in the Yukon. I mean, there's British Columbia and the Yukon.
Okay. And then pretty much all we need to have is just like that liberal government in Vancouver do one little mistake on the hunting allocations, and stone sheep could be in jeopardy.
There's 500,000 elephants on the planet. There's 12,000 stone sheep.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a very limited resource, and supply and demand is so far out of whack. And even, right now after COVID, all these guys canceled last year. Like I've had lots of guys call and go like, hey man, when there's some good deals after COVID's over, call me. It's like, there are no good deals anymore. Like supply and demand, like the demand is so high for these guys, like I got canceled last year. I was supposed to hunt stone sheep last year in the Yukon. I got canceled. Like I want a sheep hunt. Like I'm hoping to go back this year, but like there's no.
It's going to take 3 or 4 years to
hunts.
unplug that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's no cancellation hunts coming up. Like the supply and demand is going to be so far out of whack for a while, unless you're lucky like Greg. And that's honestly like the way Greg hunts sheep. If you really want to hunt sheep, moving somewhere where those opportunities are is like moving to Alaska is a legitimate reason.
Well, we've got this new political situation. Maybe we're all moving to Canada.
But even to Alaska, like, if you truly want to hunt sheep, looking for a job opportunity, if you're a young family, whatever, like in Alaska, like that's like at $25,000 to $30,000 a piece. That's a legitimate, like if you're committed, that's a legitimate.
We'll throw a bear on there and a goat and some caribou and a moose. It's like, it's a lot more. It's a year's salary and hunt opportunities for pretty cheap. Well, Mark, talk to me a little bit about, some of the different opportunities for sheep that you guys book and kind of how you set your clients up for success by, gauging their, fitness level, by gauging, their desire,
And you actually mentioned a good one I'm going to touch on just before I do that. And an aoudad down in Texas or New Mexico is like, if you want as close to get real sheep hunt as you can get West Texas for an aoudad, you're not backpacking out for 7 days, but that'll give you an idea if you like sheep hunting or not, enough to invest on one of the larger sheep hunts.
Mm-hmm.
Now to go back on your question, how we break it down, and I mean, this isn't going to come as a shock to anybody because everybody knows the price of sheep hunts. Our average sheep client is 55 years old, 55 to 65. That's just what he is. He's made it to that point in life. He can afford to go and do it. So what we do is we just break down, number one, do you want a horseback or do you want a backpack? It's generally a horseback is how guys mainly want to go. That instantly breaks it into these buckets of which outfitters offer horseback hunts versus a hiking hunt. Then it's, what do you feel comfortable with? What kind of terrain? Would you rather go to NWT to where you can get assisted by a helicopter to get somewhere? Like these are the questions that we ask and kind of break it down. And a big one is price range. You can go to a lot of places in Alaska that are a lot cheaper than if you go to NWT, but success rate goes a little bit. If you go to those places in Alaska, not as good success rate as NWT. It's a little bit tougher hunt. Shots are going to be a little bit farther. And that's just up to, once we break it down and give the clients their options, they just kind of pick which ones they think. Then we line them up with the outfitter to talk it through and go from there.
How many of the guys that are inquiring about sheep start asking about score?
That's a good question. Not nearly as many as mule deer, I can tell you that. Sheep are different. I can honestly say I've never had anybody ask me about a score of a sheep when they call to book it. It's more of, what will my success be if I go on this?
It's a one-time investment.
It's a one-time, and if I'm going to spend 30, 40, 50, 60 grand, depending on where you're going, what you're doing, I really want to come home with something. It may not be the biggest, but like if somebody's going to Alberta, the majority of sheep in Alberta aren't 160. They're between 155 and 160. And you're going to come home with that sheep. But I tell you what, that's one of the hardest trophies on planet Earth, to go and get one of those sheep.
It's kind of interesting. It's like, what motivates people? I'd be curious, Brennan, I kind of think you're a little bit of a hard ass. I mean, my perspective. I mean, you have very strong, my perspective.
I'm a realist for sure.
That's not what I was saying. I was saying like a hard ass. But you have very, very strong and defined opinions about conservation, about sheep hunting, about things that are true and things that are, that don't really matter. I'm curious. I know you do a lot of trophy hunting. I know you're around a lot of guys that do trophy hunt and shoot big stuff. But do real hardcore sheep hunters care that much about what the score is, or is it more about the age or the experience or the way it looks?
It's a little of both. There are guys that are obsessed with score for sure, and a lot of them have killed a lot of animals and they're just looking for something bigger. A lot of it is, like, for me, it's age. Like my favorite doll sheep is 19 by 29, 14 years old, ugliest thing you've ever seen. Like for me, like an old troll is cool. Like it depends. A lot of the guy, I think because there's a lot of money involved, people get pigeonholed into thinking like it's a rich guy sport or whatever. It's just it's another thing to do. It's a lot of it's the challenge too. I mean, like a lot of guys, they're looking for the next big challenge. They've done a few things and they want to try something that's harder, or they want to look for something that's more rare. It's such a small group of people. They all have different motivations. Like my motivation when I started sheep hunting was to be a quarter slammer. I wanted to get one. And now I find myself where I want to kill bigger ones or older ones, or I want to hunt new mountains and stuff that, it's just the motivation changes a little bit, especially based on success. And I don't get the score thing a lot, except for with bighorns. I mean, you get, occasionally a guy will kill a great big sheep and he'll go, oh man, I want to get in the 700 club. And then you break it down for him. Like, there's no place on the planet where you can kill a booked doll sheep. Like you can't just say, hey, I want to book a booked doll sheep. They're so rare. It's unbelievable. Same with stone sheep. It's just, I mean, once they see, what the actual success rate and what you're going to have to do. And some guys are up for that challenge. But yeah, like I said, it's the motivation, like for me, is the challenge. I love hunting new areas. I love hunting new mountain ranges. I want, to add stuff. Like that's why, hunting with a bow, I'm one away from a grand slam with a bow. And, that's a huge challenge. So.
Well, I know I finished my slam with a hunt that I booked through Mark's company for a stone sheep, and it was really north in BC. And we shot a really pretty, curled, flared up ram. Doesn't score huge. Didn't see another shooter on the trip, so thankful and grateful to have that. Saw a couple really awesome up and comers. Big loopy, heavy rams. I mean, saw some really great sheep. Had a great hunt, but I'm circling around on that second slam. I've got an awesome desert, killed a great desert with some friends of ours. It's like an awesome place to go. And I'm just sitting here thinking, it's like, okay, I probably should start looking at a stone. It's like the odds of catching another lucky deal on a bighorn are slim to none. But I was looking at my portfolio with you guys the other day, Mark, and I've got 10 or 14 points in just about every sheep potential that there is. It's like that's going to pay off one of these days.
Yep.
I might be over 55 by then.
You got to keep those knees good.
Yeah, I'm screwed.
Yep.
There's when I look at the stone and I look at that sheep, I feel that is the prettiest sheep, or can be the prettiest sheep mount that you can put together. And you look at some places, like the place I shot a stone with you, it's kind of a light gray. It's not colored up as nice. But then you go to a place like, say, like Gundahu, or Brennan can probably name off all the places with the dark sheep. But it's like you get one of those really dark chocolate rams with the accent. And to me, it's like, yeah, I want a really nice framed up sheep. I don't want to shoot a little dink. I want a great looking sheep. But I want one of those dark rams. And so, for me, I've got a motivation to seek out a different area, to hunt in the place that's going to produce a dark ram, and then go do my best to shoot the biggest ram we can find. Different motivation in that sense.
Yeah, if you're looking for a really dark sheep, you're talking about British Columbia, like the Yukon Rams, which I actually personally think the Yukon Rams are the prettiest stone sheep. Like I like the light head, gray eyeballs, darker bodies, but just the contrast on them. But that's a cool thing about stone sheep. There's no two alike. They're and I've seen, I've had a good fortune to hunt some of the areas in BC that have dark sheep in them, and you still see light sheep in there. So that's what's cool about them. But yeah, the stone sheep is they're definitely the most beautiful sheep for sure. Greg gets to hunt them every year, so he likes hunting the white sheep because he shot plenty of dark ones.
That's funny. Greg, do you have any really awesome mounts? Any awesome taxidermy?
That's it's interesting because I don't have a single mount in my house. I probably have 20 rams, ram sets of horns in my garage. For me, I do have some mounts. Actually, I'm getting a mount of a huge moose that I killed done now, but I really have a handful of mounts and none in my house because for me, it's not. And this is the great thing about all of us are looking for different things within the world. You know, you're looking for a certain colored stone sheep. Brandon loves another colored stone sheep. You know, Mark obviously traveling the world and having all these great experiences and mounting things. For me, it's totally not about the mountain. For me, it's about that pushing myself in the mountains and having this experience to the point where this year, like Brendan says, I can kill a sheep every year. It costs me $10. This year, my focus was to try to get a big ram. And I spent 200 hours in an airplane. I spent days and days on the ground, and I didn't find that ram that spoke to me, for lack of a better term. And I shut this season down with not taking the sheep for the first time in 20, maybe 25 years.
Oh, that's so sad.
Because for me, it was looking for the right ram, and it had to be it this year. I wanted it to be big, but in retrospect, now that I went through this and I didn't take one, I'm like, you know what? Maybe the search for the big ram isn't really that important. And probably next year, I know that I'll take one. I don't know what the trip is going to have to look like for it to be that right one. But yeah, for me, that's what it's about. So yeah, I do have a wildlife museum, but I don't have a single mount in my house. And the wildlife museum is something a business that I purchased and has great mounts in it. So I can go in there and look at a lot of animals whenever I want to.
Well,
he's not joking about the sheep heads in his garage. It's sickening how many over full curl rams are on the Euro skull on his rack in there. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. Mark, you obviously do a lot of taxidermy work. Talk to me a little about what a hunter needs to be prepared for in, making sure he gets home with a kick butt trophy.
Yeah, and it all depends where you're coming from to get that ram home. Obviously, it's going to be in a steep, nasty mountain. It's just knowing how to do those cuts. If you're going to be with a guide, I mean, that guide really knows how to take care of that and getting it back and frozen and as soon as you can. But a lot of times, like in a backpack hunt, Brennan, this is kind of a question for you. When you're on a backpack hunt, do you carry a little thing of salt with you, or do you just fletch it out as good as you can and then get out of there as quick as you can?
Generally, I have a couple times had like 5 pounds of salt. I don't know whether it does any good, but I turn the lips and ears on everything myself and get it down as thin as I can and keep it cool. And I've never ran into only desert sheep hunting. One time on the La Pomosa down there, it was 109 degrees out. And within an hour, I thought like, ooh, man, it was fine. But yeah, I mean, I try and get them as thin as possible. And sometimes the only time I bring salt is with bears.
Okay.
Sometime with bears, but again, if it's going to be super hot, it'd be a smart thing to do for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably something that you definitely want to ask, your outfitter. I mean, most sheep hunts are, I'm sure, outfitted, but it's something that should be talked about probably beforehand.
Yep. And most of the areas besides for Mexico and some of the southern states, it's pretty cool. So I mean, if you get that fletched down and cooled down, you're good for a couple of days so you can get out.
Well, guys, we're getting pretty close to the end of our time. I want to share a little bit of my feelings about sheep hunting and equipment. My average shot on sheep's probably been about 600 yards. I'm probably more comfortable than most people are about shooting farther, and I'm probably less picky about trophy size than most people are. Hence the smaller slam there, but. There have been a few cases where that longer shot has produced a result for me. I would like to think that most people with good preparation should be 500 to 600 yards capable in mountain shooting conditions. So I second most of your guys' assessment there. Maybe tacking on just a little bit more if you've got the gear and the preparation. I think all of you guys would say that a BDC turret on a scope is definitely a must for this type of hunt. It was always poo-pooed in the precision ballistics guys, but the truth is real hunters understand how effective that BDC turret is. It's like when the stuff is going down, you might have just a matter of seconds, and shortening communication and being clearer with communication and being just very definite with how you're holding, I think it's huge. So I would say that BDC turret system, I feel like knowing how to hold for wind in a mountain situation is really important. It's the skill that everybody overlooks, doesn't prepare for. And, you know, even if you put the time in, you're never good enough. So I think that wind situation, and then, you know, you go back to tools. Brendan, you know, indicated some, you know, having multi-purpose, you know, tools. I'm sure he's talking about like a binocular and a rangefinder together. You know, I would take that a step further: a binocular and a rangefinder and a ballistic solver. You know, that could be a backup for, you know, something else. And I always take a wind meter as well, and that wind meter can do ballistics, and then there's another backup. So, you know, I think being able to shoot on inclines, it really takes a ballistic solver. You know, something extreme, you can't just wing it. You can't just apply some correction. You need to have a solver. So that's either in your binos or a separate device or your laser rangefinder. So I would say making sure that you're prepped on the ballistic side for that 500 to 600 yard shot, understand how to correct for incline, you know, using a ballistic solution, knowing how to shoot in mountain wind conditions. We're just putting together a new range here in Cody. I'll bet if we monitor this summer, the average wind speed up there for our shooters is going to be 15 miles an hour. And we've got some 800 yard, you know, 35, 40 degree shots that you can take. We'll have some super extreme stuff, but I think seeking out training opportunities with, you know, those type of shooting scenarios. So you've done it before, right? You know what your limitations are. You know, how many people have shot on a 25 degree downhill slope? How do you set up your gun? What equipment do you use? Can you make your backpack work? Can you use your bipod? What about your hike and poles? It's like, what equipment do you have and how do you make them work for that shot scenario? So my bit is get some good equipment, make sure you've got all your bases covered, and then practice a little bit in some shooting scenarios. And that would be my bits of advice for our listeners on this episode. You guys have anything you thought of that you would like me to opine on when it comes to guns or ballistics or anything like that before we close?
On my side,
everybody said 7mm, so it's like the 6mm sheep guns didn't get a lot of love in this group.
I 6.5 or 7, but either 7 LRM. That thing is that's a
Smash.
pretty dead caliber. Yeah,
the recoil's nice, man. I mean, that's the thing a lot of people overlook. You go sheep gun, that means light. You go heavy recoil, that means it's torquey, it's hard to get on, it's very sensitive to the way you shoot. A lot of guys don't realize how much of an expert you need to be to drive a light rifle and get consistent results. It's kind of a big deal. I'm always the guy that takes a 8-9 pound gun because, you know, if I need to lose 5 or 10 pounds, like I just quit eating potatoes for a couple weeks and I'm going to turn up in here. You guys don't have as much to give up as I do. I can shed some pounds and take a heavy gun and have the same weight, but I appreciate you. What's that?
Shave mustache. I might just
not in the wintertime. Not in the wintertime.
Only thing we didn't touch on, which obviously I'm pretty biased on, is the physical aspect of mountain hunting and how important that is. We didn't even touch on. And you know, we're all talking to guys who have hunted in the mountains, and we all do kind of know that it's fairly important.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I don't think Aaron just shoots farther.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but he's not. So you
every day off the treadmill is 100 more yards.
Dude, I have this funny story. The first sheep hunt that we did, I mean, January, we knew we were going and it was on and we were training, lost a bunch of weight and we were hardcore and you know, the whole works, and had a great hunt. Went with Ghana River, killed some sheep. It was good. And, the next sheep hunt, you know, started training a little bit later in the year, really excited, you know, put about 3 months in. The next sheep hunt, I did about 2 months, maybe 6 weeks. And I think the last sheep hunt I did about maybe 2 days before we went. I said, well, let me just make sure my knees still work. And there we went. The physical thing's huge because I know that if I would have went on one of those 7-8 day backpack hunts that last time, I would have been screwed. You know, it was a really, you know, ranch hunt, slow, steady, take 2 days, done kind of deal. So I think there's that stamina aspect, but man, that mental side, it's like, I think people with mental strength, like, dude, you get on the job training when you're out there.
Mhm.
You've got the brain and the will to do it. It's like, you can make some shit happen.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that we do. I wanted to ask a question. Thanks for that story about you, but more because I have my perspective, and I'm so far in one direction with that perspective. So I kind of got yours, Aaron, but you guys, what are your thoughts on how important physical fitness really is to a sheep hunt? Because Aaron, you just alluded to the importance of the mental attitude, but for
you've got to go to the hunt that you're capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the worse shape you're doing, it really starts boxing you in on what you're capable of achieving. It's like the worst shape in the world, you can go do a helicopter sheep hunt, right?
Exactly. You're going to get dropped off on the top, and you're just going to wait.
There's the potential to do that. So it's like, if you almost got to say, it's like, if you're going to really do that exploration, big country, backpack, unsupported, unassisted, that's different, man. And it's like, to be able to do that for 10 days, it's like that will shred you if you're not ready.
And
it depends.
Go for it, Brennan.
Oh, it's one of those things too. Like, the better shape I'm in, the better my gear is, the better I'm shooting, the more I enjoy the hunt, and usually the more successful I am.
Yep.
It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Like,
because
the more prepared, just like anything, the more prepared you are, the better the outcome generally is, and the more you can enjoy it, which means you're probably going a little bit further, you're looking a little bit harder, you're not sleeping. Like, that's one of those things where
a lot of guys do these hunts to have fun.
Yep.
It's like, I actually broke
those guys.
Yeah, exactly. I broke that experience a long time ago. We filmed almost every hunt I've ever done, and it's like, it's turned into work, and it's super high pressure, right? Because the guys that sell guns can't freaking shoot bad. Like, you just can't, right? And we have a very limited budget to go do these experiences and to collect video to produce marketing materials and to sell our stuff. So it's like, there's a lot of pressure not to piss money away.
Yeah.
So to me, there's a lot of pressure on those. And what I've found is being able to shoot farther gives me more success with less time. In other words, that opportunity to take that animal at 700 or 800 yards pops up, done. Like, the one doll sheep I killed, I mean, it took me a couple tries to actually get a doll sheep, but we're way back in the backcountry. We're hunting with Dutchicks. We helicoptered to a spot, and long story short, Mike and I ended up back in a big bowl, and there's a fan and ram that he was primary to harvest, and then there's this little doll over here, and it's like, we're probably got one shot here. We're not going to get to do another one. Mike shot that fanon, and I had an opportunity to take that doll at just about 900 yards. So it's like, if I didn't shoot that far, I'm pretty sure we went home with just one sheep. And that would have been the most expensive sheep ever killed in that area. That if you miss this window or this opportunity, and a lot of guys who don't hunt all the time don't realize, but a lot of times a hunt comes down to a 5 to 10 second window where you either take advantage of it and have success, or else you vacillate, or you question, or second guess, or aren't prepared and organized with your gear. You don't have good gear management, and you miss that window. And then you'll spend 3 or 4 days, learning that was your one shot. So I've always been really paranoid about not having enough gear to be able to shoot as far as I need to. I mean, my thoughts are, in the big mountain country that we hunt elk in here, it's like, if I can't shoot 1,200 yards, I'm undergunned. Like, I'm going to miss an opportunity. I'm literally, my average elk kill, and we don't kill big stuff like Brennan does, but it's like, I'm taking my kids that have never hunted elk before, or 16-year-old girls. And I mean, we're killing elk, with probably a 2-day average.
That giant bull I killed in 54, that's the only truly long range shot I shot that in 951, because I had the guys there that could help me get it done.
Yep.
That's the one, but,
yep.
And
the opportunity was there. Yep. Perfect. So I think having that ability to shoot farther you all it's an ability and a skill. So it's not like you're just buying success, but literally it's an investment in success. And I think you could take the same articulation of physical fitness, on a sheep hunt or on any hunt. If you invest in that physical fitness, whether it allows you to hunt longer, or it allows you to just get over that next ridge, or to get there faster, or whatever it does, that physical fitness also enhances your chances for success. And it's an investment that, a smart hunter is going to want to make.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really pissed. Last year, I lost so much weight. I dropped almost 50 pounds. And I didn't have a freaking sheep hunt to take advantage of it.
Mm.
This year, for various reasons, and I'm going to blame it a lot on physical handicaps, whatever, but I had ankle surgery, I got knee problems, I tore out my shoulder on a muskox hunt. It's like I didn't work out at all. Ended up eating way too much fast food this summer, and I put all that weight back on. Mike just killed an awesome bighorn. I had to go hiking and sheep hunting way back in the back country, freezing my butt off in the snow, and I'm way overweight, out of shape. And then we're going to go do a desert sheep hunt end of this month for another sheep. And
Are you
I'm
going back to Emilio's?
Yeah,
You are, huh?
Mike's going to take a turn.
Oh, cool.
So here's two opportunities here, and it's like we've been smart enough to learn where to go to have success and to shoot big stuff, and where you're going to have a high chance of success, and you're not going to spend 8 days backpacking. So I'm really hoping we got out of too much work there on the bighorn. I'm hoping it's not bad down here on the desert hunt, but I think that physical fitness is worth investing in.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mark, when you've hunted all over the world and some, obviously high ticket hunts, just
Mm-hmm.
like these two guys, give me a scenario where you believe that your physical ability got you one of those animals that maybe otherwise it wouldn't have.
That Marco Polo, I go back. I've done a lot, but that Marco Polo was one that, hey, I wasn't going to whack it from the truck like a lot of guys do over there. And we just got out and we just started fricking hiking, and we're at 14,000 feet. And that was, there was nobody else that was doing that with me. That was just straight fitness and being stupid, or mental capacity, but more stupid than anything, and going to do it. But there's a lot like that on that mental part. When we have guys roll into camp, we get the wide variety of guys that are extremely fit, and I just stopped judging though, because I always used to think, man, that guy's extremely fit, he's going to do really good. Some of those extremely fit guys, once you get them in the elements, crack like you've never seen. And then I'm sitting here looking at somebody that's 60 pounds overweight. He's got a bad knee, and I'm going, man, this guy's not going to be able to do it. And he grinds out an 8-day, doesn't complain one time, and makes a heck of a shot. And that's all that mental part of it. So it's unique if you can combine those two things of being fit. And I mentioned this last year when we did it. I'm a big believer in stretching. Like, I'm pushing 40 now, and I got to be able to be flexible. Otherwise I'll end up hurting myself. That's what I've learned over the last 10 years. If I'm not flexible, I'm going to hurt myself, especially in the mountains. I got bad knees. I got bad ankles. I'm going to step on something. It's going to move one way or the other. So I'm a huge guy that just talks about flexibility with guys in their 50s, which nobody listens to me. But it's one of those things I'm like, guys, you got to be able to touch your toes. You got to be able to do these things in the mountains.
There's benefits you get back home with being flexible also.
Exactly. It's a win for everybody.
Brendan's not paying attention. That should have at least got a smile out of it.
No, I was. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the same way. Like, the lighter I am, the better I feel. And I'm got a little COVID weight on me right now. I'm trying to get rid of. But yeah, it definitely, being in good shape just allows me to, to go further. And I've done a couple now back to back, NWT, and then go to Alaska. And 8 days is one thing, 25 days straight is another. And that's the kind of stuff where if you're not in great shape and mental toughness, I was kind of what Mark had alluded to. I've had some hunters with me that I was like, I took a guy to Tiburon that was wearing Skechers, and it was like jeans and Skechers. And I was, older guy, smoked, just tougher than hell. And I've had you know, like my one outfitter buddy had this guy during the summertime a couple years ago, drew a sheep tag, and he was like sending him pictures doing, you know, cleaning jerks in his yard with his shirt off, and the guy was a mental midget and cracked in one day. So like, you know, again, being mentally tough is probably more important than but if you can do both, if you can be both mentally tough and in great shape, you're going to be able to get through the tough stuff.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think sheep hunting brings opportunities for all types. And I think Mark made a really good point about trying to make sure that you pick the hunt that fits you, whether it's like the trophy that you're chasing or the activity level that you're capable of achieving. It's like match it up. It doesn't do you any good to be in Greg's shape if your guide's in my shape.
I think that is a huge point. And one of the things about, you know, when you're going to buy one of these hunts, if you don't know your outfitter and you don't know who the guide is going to be, and you could be in the greatest shape, and all of a sudden you find somebody that, you know, that's had been in the field for 50 years and they know exactly what they're doing, and all of a sudden, yeah, but we don't do that. Like we don't hunt like past. We don't want to come back to camp at night, or you know, these things that can happen. You're in great shape and they're not. Like that's one big thing that I've noticed in the outfitting industry is that if I'm in a different situation. If I was looking at buying a sheep hunt, I would know my guide.
Mm-hmm.
I would know what my guide is capable of. I'd be talking to that guy if the outfitter would let me. And I think that that's one of the things that I notice in the outfitting industry, that there's charging, you know, there's these costs of $50,000 for a sheep hunt, and guides are getting paid, you know, next to nothing. What do you expect that you're going to get for a guide? So I could be wrong, but you guys will have better information. Like, I mean, I've guided, and that's probably a little bit controversial. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, if I was paying $50,000, I'd have my guide on a workout program.
There's guides that are killers and there's guides that are just going to work.
Yeah.
It's like if you've got a killer, then you've got that guy with that mental toughness. It's like pair up with one of those guys. It doesn't matter what you have to overcome.
Yep.
You'll be successful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Guys, thanks for your time today. It was a great discussion. Good stuff. I actually would like to do this again sometime.
You just let us know.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I thought you, yeah, no, this is great.
What do you guys have for sheep hunts this year? Greg's going to do his $10 sheep hunt.
Yeah.
Mark, what are you doing?
I'm going to try to do the slam with the Gunwerks muzzleloader this year. Start in BC.
All four.
Go right from BC up to the Yukon, and then catch a seasoner opener in Alberta in September and end it in Mexico.
That's freaking awesome. Brendan, what are you up to?
I'm going to be hunting the Yukon. Yeah. So,
Cool.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, I hope we're going to Canada.
Yep.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time today. It was a great event, and hopefully our listeners and viewers, you know, recognize the amount of experience that you guys have. And I would encourage everybody to kind of seek you out individually, follow your social media channels. You know, Mark and Greg, you guys have some television programming. It's like jump on there and follow that. Everybody that follows KUIU knows that KUIU produces a lot of content. Brendan's a part of that. Participates in the blogs and other areas with information and tips. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter. There's always great articles that are coming out there. So I would encourage everybody that's interested, whether it's your first sheep hunt or your first international sheep hunt or your 10th sheep hunt, you know, check these guys out and latch onto them and see what they have to tell you and see what they can do to help you on that journey to experience that mountain hunting lifestyle that we all enjoy, and to get your sheep. It'll be great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.